Hey, everybody. Welcome to this emergency episode of the College Football Insiders. We were not expecting completely a bloody Sunday in week 3 of college football, but that's the nature of the beast, especially when we have such low turnover in the power conferences in the latch coaching cycle. Sunday morning, we hear news broken by our Matt Zenitz that UCLA is firing Deshaun Foster as their head coach, only 15 games into his career there as head coach. And also Virginia Tech has fired Brent Pry as their head coach after an 0-3 start there. In fact, Deshaun Foster and Brent Pry both 0-3 to start the season. Terrible, terrible starts for them. Matt, I want to start with you here. Was the writing on the wall at UCLA immediately after they lost to New Mexico?
Really in both of these situations, but more in the context of both coaches clearly being in line to be out. It was just a matter of when, not if. And really during the course of the last couple of days, specifically with UCLA, started to hear more and more about the possibility of this happening this weekend, even though it was getting mixed messages on that. That then picked up on my end this morning about the possibility of this happening as soon as today. Heard about team meeting being called, that wasn't a standard time to be having a team meeting on a Sunday, which, as you guys know, when you hear about stuff like that, it's usually
especially during a bye week.
Flag. And look, they're heading into a bye week, so that did cross my mind that maybe they're just changing up the schedule because of heading into a bye week, but it was still a red flag there. So it was doing some additional digging on my end. Once heard about that, and I obviously culminated with Deshaun and UCLA staff, UCLA players being notified that they're moving on from him 3 games into his second season as head coach. With Virginia Tech, this was clearly, as you guys know, a make or break year for Brent Pry. This was year 4 for him. Won 3 games his first year, was 6-6 each of the last 2 regular seasons. And it was very clear heading into this season that he needed to win to keep his job, and ultimately was 0-3, terrible loss yesterday to Old Dominion, and that expedited the process of Virginia Tech pulling the trigger there and deciding to make this move today. It was just that loss yesterday to go along with the previous 3+ years.
And I also want to get into this because now we're moving on from those, and we know why they're moving on. Just simply, you're just not winning, and things seem to be kind of out of sorts at both programs organizationally, but also just trying to get the most out of your talent. Virginia Tech, very interesting here because the president, Tim Sands, is the one who makes the announcement, not Whit Babcock, the athletics director there. Also at UCLA, you have a situation where Martin Germain, the athletics director there, has been under some pressure anyway, even dating back to a couple of years ago about whether to fire Chip Kelly as their head coach. And then in the end, Chip Kelly says, deuces, peace out. I'm going to go be an OC at Ohio State. So there was pressure on him to make a hire. And then he ends up going with Deshaun Foster, a legend, obviously, but not a lot of experience. And it blew up in his face relatively quickly. You get Nico Iamaleava at quarterback, out of the transfer portal from Tennessee, comes back to the West Coast. A lot of hopes put on him, and perhaps too much because he didn't necessarily have the pieces there, at least here early in the interim, to make a run. But guys, these are interesting situations because in the administrations at both programs potentially in flux themselves. At Virginia Tech, Whit Babcock, the athletics director there, as we've mentioned on the show several times, in the summer, publicly went to the board of trustees and said, with this new ACC structure where we have to get more money and it is based off of TV viewership, in their studies, he said, we've got to win at least 9 games or more to put us in a position to be competitive financially with the other power programs across the country. Well, you're 0-3. The only way to get to 9 wins now is to win out. Obviously, that's off the board potentially. Yeah. Virginia Tech sees this as an opportunity here to make a move. In fact, Aaron, if you can bring up that statement, I wanted to bring this up because I found this very, very, very specific in what they were saying. about what the future is going to look like there at Virginia Tech, all coming from the president, Tim Sands, saying that the board members will work with athletics director Whit Babcock to, quote, develop a financial, organizational, and leadership plan this month. He ended his statement with, the new framework for college sports will be fully established for next season. So this is the time to make a major move. Indeed, guys. I mean, Virginia Tech's in a position where it's been very inconsistent since the Frank Beamer days. And you see the record for Brent Pry. He was 16-24 since 2022. That's the second worst record in the ACC. And there are some bad teams in the ACC. And as a program as proud as Virginia Tech, they can't have that. So, guys, I asked this, I'll open the floor. Where does Virginia Tech go from here? Do we expect them to try and swing big?
I mean, first of all, if I can start just to backtrack, but before Chris, if you want to follow up and look at just the moving forward component. Last year was the missed opportunity for Virginia Tech. I know it seems like a long time ago now, but if you think back to last summer and leading into last season, Virginia Tech was viewed as a dark horse team to compete in the ACC, maybe win an ACC title. That they had a number of players that NFL scouts had draftable grades on heading into the year. And for them,
dynamic quarterback and Kyron Drones,
the receiver group, the running back who's now with the Jaguars, Tootin, they had a lot of talent on last year's team, to the point that there were a lot of people around the college football landscape that thought they had a chance to not only have a strong season, but potentially compete for an ACC title and a playoff spot. As crazy as that sounds now for a team that ultimately finished the regular season 6-6. But that was the missed opportunity right there. As far as moving forward, Chris, do you want to take it in terms of just what makes sense for them and what you see the plan and vision being for them?
Well, I did want to say first, just holistically, and I realize this conversation can get lost a little bit with two firings and within like 10 minutes of each other. But this was kind of expected from a college football standpoint. I think people see this in week 3 and think like, oh my God, like what's happening? But this was always going to be a cycle where we could have double-digit Power 4 jobs come open. This is the very start of what's expected to be a very busy cycle on the Power 4 level. Last year, teams were a little unsure what the rev share was going to look like. They had to save money to pay for a lot of the bills that were popping up because of rev share. And now you're seeing teams like in Virginia Tech's case, like with an eye towards the future, making moves, and they're going to be far from alone. And to be honest, like you talk about a missed opportunity, like last cycle was a better time to have a job like Virginia Tech come open. You had a much larger pool of candidates because you had access to everyone. Like Virginia Tech's moving early, but there are going to be a lot of teams in a similar position looking for coaches. And it's going to be a very competitive cycle for Virginia Tech to make an addition they want to, even though I think if you talk with industry sources, and I know all of us have been doing that the last hour, they view Virginia Tech as a really promising job that will have a number of interested candidates because of some of the advantages that come with it. Like Brandon, we were talking about a little of this before. I would consider Virginia Tech a slightly better job than UCLA at this point, even though it's in the ACC compared to the Big Ten, because of one, a willingness for Virginia Tech to spend. And you mentioned that, Brandon, but also just like, frankly, path. Like UCLA is in a really tough position in the Big Ten. So, I mean, we can all bat around some candidates, but I did want to just get that out of the way. Like this is expected holistically for the cycle, and Virginia Tech is a job that still, despite some of the limitations we were talking about, is viewed with an optimistic lens.
Matt, you're incredibly plugged in. You're incredibly plugged in, but I'll just say this summer, talking to people just casually, everybody expected Virginia Tech to come open. And I heard a lot of interest, even on the front end here before this was all coming.
I completely agree with Chris. Like this is going to be a more attractive job than UCLA. UCLA, there are going to be real reservations as far as that situation. So if you look back at the last 20 years, I think it's been 20 years since they finished a regular season with fewer than 3 losses,
right,
which indicates to me just some issues and challenges there, regardless of who the head coach is. And I think during the course of that time have had double-digit losing seasons, which further makes me feel like that. But
all right,
with Deshaun, like if you look back at last year, actually closed the season on a positive note. It's easy to forget now, but UCLA started off slow and then closed the season by winning 4 of its final 6 games, I believe. It was right in it with USC. I think lost that game by a touchdown, maybe a field goal. I can't remember the exact score, but could have been 5-1 during the course of final 6 games. And as we've talked about a lot, and I know we've gotten crap for after the fact, UCLA internally, that staff had big expectations and real optimism heading into this season. And by no means did they think they were going to be in the position that they're in right now, where not only 0-3 without Deshaun Foster as head coach, but coming off just an abysmal, embarrassing performance against New Mexico that you end up losing to not only New Mexico, but you lose to New Mexico by 3 touchdowns, 25 points, whatever it was.
Under a first-year head coach that had to replace a lot of talent at New Mexico, and they come into the Rose Bowl and blow you out.
Like, there's no other way to sum that up.
All right, let's go to I want to go over here real quick on UCLA. You see the graphic on the screen there. The largest point differential to start a season through 3 games. 4th largest in school history, 65 points. And of course, one of those losses being to a group of 6 school, just absolutely unacceptable at any power program, let alone one that's playing in the Rose Bowl for their home games. Chris, go ahead. You had something to add?
No, I think it's worth mentioning with UCLA, like beyond like the obvious deficiencies on the field, there's also just like I think within the industry, there's also an investment question with UCLA. Like, how much are they going to commit to football? That was a huge issue under Chip Kelly. Like, I think Chip Kelly and his staff would blame the administration for not going all in on NIL. And I think the administration would blame Chip Kelly for not fundraising. And that's part of the reason why Foster came in, was to spark some more donations to the program. But like, at the same time, like this is a Big Ten program that does not have like Big Ten level resources for the team that wants to compete. And I think this coaching search is going to say a lot about what Martin Jamond and UCLA football in general wants this program to be. I think it's actually like, I mean, if you want to think about it from a UCLA fan's perspective, I'd be encouraged that they made this decision now. Like, they could have saved about $1.5 million by waiting until December to fire Deshaun Foster, and they decided to move early. So that does signal a level of commitment. But I think we're going to find out a lot more about how this search is run and who the candidates are over the next month or two, because it's going to say which direction UCLA wants to go.
Let's get into potential candidates here for Virginia Tech and UCLA. But first, we're going to take a break here on the College Football Insiders.
Only CBS Sports can bring you big time during the heart of Saturday afternoons. It's big time.
It's big time. It's big time. It's big time.
On CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right, guys, welcome back to the College Football Insiders. Like and subscribe to us on YouTube and search for College Football Insiders wherever you get your podcasts. Chris Hummer, Matt Zenitz joining me here after Brent Pry is fired at Virginia Tech and Deshaun Foster is fired at UCLA just 3 weeks into the season. Let's talk some potential candidates here. It's very early, but I've been texting some agents, some people in the industry, just to get a gist of kind of what names would make sense at some of these jobs. Let's start with Virginia Tech, guys. They're in the ACC, a proud program, one that their atmosphere is incredible. The fan base is really strong, and Frank Beamer is the reason for that. So I'll start with one name that, you know, people bring up, and that's Shane Beamer at South Carolina. Would he be a legitimate candidate and someone that would be interested in following in his father's footsteps?
He's definitely an intriguing candidate, and I think he's the guy that if you talk to Virginia Tech fans, like they're going to mention him first. But
I just don't see him leaving South Carolina for Virginia Tech at this point. It's easy to make the connection. I just don't see it happening at this point.
All right, some other guys here potentially, and I'll just mention a few. You guys add, subtract, whatever. Bob Chesney, James Madison is a name that's come up. Yep. I've heard Kurt Signetti, Indiana. I think that's a stretch at this point. Tyson Helton at Western Kentucky. You mentioned Charles Huff at Southern Miss.
Charles Huff comes up a lot for that one on my end.
Why would Charles Huff make sense there?
I mean, he's done nothing but win in his career to this point. I realize things ended poorly for him at Marshall, largely because, I mean, you win a conference championship and you essentially get your walking papers or split with your school because of your relationship with your AD. But he's been a really successful coach. He has a deep ties to that area. Like, I think he's somebody that a lot of people think could be very successful. Bob Chesney, if you're looking at G5 coaches, like to your point, like Bob Chesney is another name, and James Madison that has come up quite a few times in my hand. I wonder if Jamie Chadwell, it's not going well at Liberty, but he's a guy a couple people have mentioned. But I also think Virginia Tech's going to have options outside of the G5 head coaches if they want to go that direction too. This is a job that's going to attract a very wide pool of candidates.
Bob Chesney is a name that makes a lot of sense. Currently coaching in-state right now. One of the things that's going to be attractive about Bob Chesney for different schools that could have openings this cycle, including potentially Virginia Tech, is ADs and high-ranking officials within athletic departments like not only success, but success at multiple places, a track record of success at more than just one place. And with Bob Chesney, you've seen him be a program builder at several different places at this point. He's a name that would make sense for that. Charles Huff, like was touched on already, has significant ties to the mid-Atlantic region, just coached in the state at Marshall, has experience at Penn State, and also has just a certain respect level in terms of his ability as a head coach, to the point that he's gotten looks for P4 jobs before.
Do we feel that Virginia Tech is, I mean, one, we know football is a leader there, but do we feel like they're about to ante up? Because it certainly seems like that from the president's statement, that they need to make a major move here now because big picture here, as you guys know, college football might not look the same 5 years from now with all these TV contracts coming up, discussions about a super league, maybe further consolidation of the sport, maybe expansion in the Big Ten, expansion in the SEC. And Virginia Tech's always been a valuable target potentially, especially for the SEC, one that makes sense. And Virginia Tech, certainly by the statement by President Tim Sands today, certainly seems like they're trying to position themselves to make sure they don't get left behind.
I'll say this, and got distracted by a phone call just now while going through just what I was saying previously, but some other names to go along with those two that have come up on my end that would make sense as possibilities for Virginia Tech in no particular order whatsoever. Ryan Silverfield at Memphis has probably deserves more credit for the job that he's doing there. And I think he's putting himself in a position where he could be on the radar for some P4 stuff going into this cycle. Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator at Miami. Miami's a potential ACC championship, potential playoff team, but potential national championship type team with him leading the way for that offense. We saw what he did last year with Cam Ward. He has experience in state at West Virginia. He could maybe be a name to keep an eye on. Also, you guys know when it comes to replacing a head coach, sometimes administration, AD makes you find a different sort of profile compared to what they had previously. Brent Pry, a defensive head coach. So not saying this is 100% going to be the case, but sometimes ADs like to switch it up and find someone that is on the other end of the spectrum. And obviously Shannon Dawson, an offensive guy. Brian Hartline.
I would put decent money on Virginia Tech hiring an offensive coach. That is not reporting. That is just like history of following.
That's history. Everybody, the trend is you go the opposite side when something fails. Exactly.
So two more quick ones. Brian Hartline has gotten looks for P4 jobs before. Could see him being on the radar potentially for something like that. And then another one who's currently a head coach, but somebody with an offensive background, G.J. Kinney at Texas State. I think he's putting himself in position to be a hot name once again this coming cycle.
And G.J. Kinney was somebody that got looks last cycle for a couple of the P4 jobs that were open as well. And it doesn't really, at least like right now at this moment, it doesn't seem like any P4 jobs would be coming open in Texas, which is like the jobs that GJ is usually linked to. So sometimes
Sark's not on the hot seat.
Who's not on the hot seat?
The joke. I said Steve Sarkisian's not on the hot seat.
Give it a couple more weeks, Brandon. We'll see. Where we're
I
at.
know.
So two other ones. What do you guys think, just in terms of how much they would make sense for this? Andy Kotelnicki at Penn State, offense coordinator there, obviously has the experience that he does under Lance Leipold and played a significant role just in
incredibly creative offense, and one that gets schemed up so well that defensive coordinators are very impressed every time they go into a game day.
And in that region right now. So in the Mid-Atlantic region, he's been on the radar for, as far as being a guy that is ready or maybe ready to make that jump to being a head coach, including potentially at the P4 level. And I don't know if this is going to be Virginia Tech or somewhere else, but Pat Fitzgerald is definitely going to be a name worth keeping an eye on heading into this cycle. Pat Fitzgerald wants to be a head coach again. And we all saw what Pat did at Northwestern prior to that ending like it did well enough that he was on the radar at different points for NFL head coaching jobs. I wonder just what ends up being a potential fit there for him. And
he fits that hard hat approach at Virginia Tech.
He does.
But he's also more of a defensive guy, so it would go against what Chris just said. But there's a lot to like about somebody like a Pat Fitzgerald, whether it's Virginia Tech or someone else this cycle. Just a name that people should definitely have on the radar, whether it's for that or something else, just as a name to remember when it comes to different things.
I don't know about you guys, but I fully expect Pat Fitzgerald to be a coach next year somewhere in college football.
Same. I mean, if we're just throwing Pat Fitzgerald's name out, like, this is not something somebody else has brought up to me, but like, he knows how to handle a school with some academic restrictions, and UCLA is the school in that position. Although if I was him, I'd rather have Virginia Tech. I'd also throw out Will Stein for that job. He's going to get thrown out for a lot of jobs this cycle.
Which job?
The Virginia Tech. Well,
Virginia
he'll
Tech,
also come up for UCLA. Don't worry.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Will Stein played at Louisville. He was a quarterback there. Like, he is familiar with that area of the country. And I just think there's always a couple of coaches every cycle who get thrown out for every job. And I think Will Stein this cycle is one of the ones that's going to get positioned to be a name brought up over and over and over again.
Yeah. I think we go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going to say, just to close the loop on the Pat Fitzgerald one, depending on what happens with Kirk Ferentz in Iowa, that's one that I think could make a lot of sense also. So you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Kirk or doesn't Pat's son currently play it?
Yes, he's there. He's there.
So that's one that, like, we'll see what happens with Kirk. I know it means by saying right now that Kirk is in his last year at Iowa, or that he's planning on moving on. But if because people always like to speculate about that with Kirk, that's one that I think could make sense for Pat, and obviously has a lot of experience.
Matt, you may have gotten the same text as me, but when Pat Fitzgerald's lawsuit got settled, I was immediately got a text saying, "Hey, look out for Pat Fitzgerald maybe to come to Iowa as a special assistant this season." So, hey,
I've gotten some messages about that. So,
yeah.
Well, none of the special assistant apart, but just keeping an eye on just Iowa as a whole when it comes to.
Well,
yeah, Panama Jack in the YouTube comments here says Billy Napier next. I mean, he's barring a miracle, maybe so, but the timing we'll have to see. Go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just gonna say, shout out to Kirk Ferentz, passed Woody Hayes to become the Big Ten's all-time leading coach yesterday. That's another check mark for him in his career, and
now we're speculating.
People speculating every year about retirements, and his name's certainly going to come up.
All right, guys,
just to follow up on what Chris was saying, by the way. So he brought up just Will Stein and not only Virginia Tech, but UCLA. One other coach at Oregon who I think could maybe make sense. Exactly. So Tosh has been Dan Lanning's defense coordinator there for the last few years, has done some good stuff with that defense. He's also from California, energetic, beyond high energy guy, hell of a recruiter, which we've known about Tosh going back to
Alabama.
Exactly. For a long time, and even pre-Bama. That's one that, like, I don't know if you can call UCLA the same kind of sleeping giant by any means that we were calling Arizona State a couple of years ago. But you've seen what Kenny Dillingham has done as just young, energetic head coach, has just breathed a certain type of energy and life into that program. And I could see someone with the characteristics of a Tosh doing that for a UCLA, and just based on the success that Oregon's having, based on what they're in line to do the rest of the way this year, and the fact that they're doing a good job defensively to go along with that, and Tosh's resume just frankly being what it is, I would be somewhat surprised to a degree if Tosh isn't at the very least an interview type guy for that job. And again, from California. So there are some ties there, and has worked in the state before. So
producer
Aaron
wants to mention that he was a coach at Cal for a long time and spent a lot of his career on the West Coast. So
and is very furious. And is very furious that he left Cal, and he says, "quote unquote," stole recruits. We're not going to comment on that. Producer Aaron's got some sour grapes, but let's get deeper into UCLA and what kind of candidate pool they might be looking at, because again, the administration there is an interesting situation. Is Martin Drummond going to have full control on this hire? I have my doubts.
I would mention it's the same. I mean, we'll see what happens, but it is quite literally the exact same two people running that search as of right now. And you can even see it in the press release. It's Drummond and Aaron Atkins, who's their associate athletic director, that made the hire last time and kind of pivoted to Deshaun Foster very quickly during that coaching cycle. So unless they go out and hire a legitimate search firm, I think people around the industry are going to have some questions about how this is run.
Okay, so the question is, will UCLA make a big swing? If they do, the name that came up to me from someone was Jonathan Smith at Michigan State. Pasadena native, has the West Coast ties, previously at Oregon State. Michigan State, no offense, is a second-tier Big Ten program. UCLA is in that situation too, but because it's on the West Coast, maybe he wants another fresh start, go back out west. Maybe that would be tempting to him. But who else would be interesting there? We mentioned Tosh Lapoy from Zenitz there. Would Jonathan Smith be interested in this type of gig? Who else would be on the table there potentially?
A name that I think is going to come up, and it's come up, is Tony White, the defensive coordinator at Florida State. He's a UCLA alumnus, has been up for a number of head coach jobs the last couple of years, just interviewed in a couple of these situations. And especially if Florida State continues the momentum they've had this year, I think Tony White is a guy who can garner some momentum there. And a lot of agents have mentioned his name to me, not only today, but in the last couple months, if UCLA ever comes open. So that's a guy that you definitely need to keep an eye on among a number of others.
What if Dan Mullen has a very successful first year at UNLV?
That would be a very interesting fit, Dan Mullen and UCLA, but very good head coach. I think D'Anton Lynn, the defensive coordinator at USC, has come up. Worked at UCLA previously. As a guy
USC stole him.
Yes, and now UCLA could potentially
some guys like that would take it at this point.
Really?
I don't know. I'm not saying 100% no, but you're going to see a lot of coaches that have reservations about that situation.
Yeah.
What about Will Stein? What about Will Stein at Oregon?
I mean, will somebody who's put himself in a position that he's deserving of consideration for P4 opportunities? That there's no question whatsoever. But you did bring up interesting name with Dan Mullen. Had somebody in the industry, I'll just say, bring up coming out of UNLV's win over UCLA, going back to week 2, that, quote unquote, you may have just seen the next coach at UCLA be the soon to be fired head coach at UCLA.
Yeah, that's right. I'm Dan Mullen. I can be the head coach out in LA. Yeah, it's great. Kevin Pryor in the YouTube chat mentions, would UCLA look to go prime time and take a look at Deion Sanders? I mean, I don't know, but can you imagine prime time in LA and Westwood? That would draw a lot of eyes. I don't know if he would want to take it, but you know,
Yeah,
if
I don't know
UCLA's
if
looking to
Deion
try and
Sanders
make,
wants to take a second with all the medical issues he's had. I don't know if Deion Sanders wants to take a second, like, giant overhaul of a program infrastructure.
and he's also making a lot of money there in Boulder.
$10 million a year for Colorado, right? Like UCLA,
Yeah, so,
I would be very surprised if they got to $10 million for their next head coach.
Right, exactly. I mean, here's the thing. UCLA probably can't afford to drag this out, right? They're going to have to jump early, right? To try to get someone before all these other big jobs open up in late October, November, try to make some headway.
I mean, how early can they really jump, though? If you're hiring a sitting head coach, that sitting head coach isn't going to accept that job in season.
That's why I'm talking assistants.
I also think no.
Yeah, and I was going to say for assistants, like we bring up the two Oregon guys with Tosh and Will. Those are coaches that are part of potential playoff or national championship team. So I could see there being just some pause there to just accept something at another school at some sort of ridiculously early point. I don't know, but at the same time, whether it's UCLA, whether it's Virginia Tech, that there are players on those rosters that the next head coach is not going to want to lose and leave the program. So it's a difficult thing to balance, but at the same time, for Virginia Tech, we throw out primarily sitting head coaches. That kind of stuff just frankly is not going to happen until after the regular season, right, or until after conference championship games. And then even for assistants, the timing of this can be sensitive.
I would also throw out timing wise, and we'll see how this plays out. But like theoretically, and like this is something I've had a couple people bring up, the timeline could actually get pushed back a little bit if the transfer portal period gets pushed to January and they truly go dead in December. There's less of a impetus to hire immediately in early December before signing day. Like you obviously want to, there's still a signing day in December and that matters. But like, I don't think schools are going to be in as much of a hurry. Like it still makes sense to get your guy in as early as possible, but there's not going to be kind of that bum rush that we've seen in recent years because of the impetus of the portal. Like with that being delayed a little bit, schools have a little bit more time to get adjusted, hire, and also convince their players to come back.
By the way,
but I did want to throw out one more name, like just for UCLA that I'm curious to get y'all's take on. And this is something I had an agent throw at me, I think more as a thought exercise than anything. But what about the name Dave Aranda? West Coast guy.
He was a guy that was mentioned UCLA in the past. If the way I would see that potentially happening is if Baylor just has like an 8-win season, something like that, where they're not in the Big 12 contention, but they have a really good year. And he's like, this is about it. Because if I have another like 6-win year here, maybe they want to move on. So maybe I need to make the jump now. If he's very, very successful at Baylor this year, and I think they have the talent to win the Big 12 this year, they are very, very physical. I don't think he would even entertain it. But that is a very interesting name, and I think it depends a lot on circumstances of how Baylor performs this season.
Well, I can think of a notable Baylor alumnus, and that is a part of the show that if I remember correctly, early in the game against SMU was maybe thinking about some columns he could write about Dave Aranda's future. So it could change quickly in college football, which is
I think he's a great coach. I think he's a great coach, and I love his personality. We don't get to see enough of it because he's very much in the Mike Leach out there frame of mind. He's got some interesting things to say, although he's a little bit more reserved. I love him in college football. I think he's a great coach, personally, a CEO type.
Dave crossed my mind this morning, but at the same time, and first of all, not only was on the radar for UCLA previously, but wasn't he on the radar for even USC, or his name was floated out there as a possibility prior to them hiring Lincoln Riley? So has the California ties has been on the radar for California jobs in the past. But at the same time, unless he's going to be out at Baylor, UCLA, frankly, is just a step back right now from what Baylor is. And I think that he's going to have enough success at Baylor that he's not going to be out at Baylor.
I totally agree.
Right. But the thing is there's always the question of restarting the clock, right? Because if he is successful at Baylor this year, but how are they going to react if he has like a 5-win season again?
I think that is a scenario that's possible. One last thing to throw out, and this is from the comment section from Kevin Pryor on YouTube. What about Michael Vick at Virginia Tech? Too soon?
Too soon.
Yeah. How's he doing at Norfolk?
Just got his first win, didn't he? Last week.
He did. Yeah.
Just too soon.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Any last thoughts here? I mean, as we said, to reset the stage here, this is going to be a busy coaching carousel season, and I would foresee this not being the end of in-season firings on the power conference level. What about you guys?
Oh, it's no question. I mean, we could have another one. I mean, I'm not counting. We'll see what happens, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was another one next weekend, depending on how things go, on a pretty notable game in Florida and how that plays out. So we'll see.
Florida at Miami next week.
And then Florida goes into a bye week right after that.
Right.
So that's a job, but there's a lot of jobs worth watching this year. And I think there could be a number of retirements potentially soon, depending on how the season plays out. So we're far from done.
We will see. Billy Napier on the hot seat, probably the hottest seat out there right now as we stand after the firings of Brent Pry at Virginia Tech and Deshaun Foster at UCLA, both out after 0-3 starts to the season.
You're forgetting Mike Gundy. Wait with that one. I would put him on.
Oh gosh,
also.
Man,
they're bad. They're so bad this year. I never thought I'd see.
They have Tulsa next week. If that's a Tulsa roster, by the way, with probably half a dozen former Oklahoma State players. That goes the wrong way.
I can tell you that Tulsa's had that very much circled on the calendar. So it'd be fantastic to see, to watch. Very much like it's a lower level version of what we saw at Tulane Duke. I'll just say that this past weekend. So, all right. Well, thanks for joining us for this emergency podcast on the firings of Brent Pry and Deshaun Foster at Virginia Tech and UCLA, respectively. My guests, of course, Matt Zenitz and Chris Hummer, regular part of the crew here on the College Football Insiders, bringing you scoop and intel that I don't think you can find anywhere else. Matt Zenitz is, I say as plugged in as anybody else, but he's plugged in and no one else can put their plugins into the socket. In fact, I thought I had something with Brent Pry today. I tweeted, I even tagged Matt on X or Twitter or whatever. And I was like, let me see what Matt had. Matt broke it like 10 minutes beforehand. He's just always ahead of the curve. So if you guys aren't following Matt Zenitz, you need to do so because he gets everything. All right. That's it for this episode. Make sure to join us Tuesday for the regularly scheduled episode of the College Football Insiders. We will see you down the road.